Welcome back, everyone, to Keeping Current, the podcast from ERS and HVM, designed to plug you into the world of electrical power systems. I'm your host, Joe O'Dwyer, and in this episode, we're exploring the critical role of electrical systems in supporting the new, reliable EV charging infrastructure that is very paramount coming into everybody's lives. From the charger itself to upstream components like switchgear and breakers, we'll discuss how optimizing every link in the power delivery chain ensures safety first, efficiency, and uptime. Joining me today is my good friend Penny Juleff, business development manager who brings a customer focused perspective on how facilities can plan, invest, and scale EV charging infrastructures to meet their growing demands while managing risk and compliance. Let's get ready to unplug and connect. And welcome to Keeping Current, Penny.
Thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate the introduction, and it's great to be here.
Good to see you again. Well, let's start with the big picture, Penny. EV charging isn't about just technology, it's also about meeting customer expectations, their needs, sustainability goals, and regulatory requirements. From your business development perspective, what's driving the urgency around EV infrastructure investment right now?
Well, there are a few things, but I think first and foremost, we all want to do what's best for the environment, right? Therefore, the more EVs become the norm, the more infrastructure is required, and so that continues to be top of mind for a lot of individuals and businesses.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. One thing I've noticed, it seems like there's a real shift from nice to have to a must have condition. How are organizations framing EV charging? Are they viewing it as just a cost of doing business or a strategic opportunity to help the client, help the generate revenue? What is it?
Well, I think it's a little bit of all of the above. Although EVs still cost just a little more than combustion engine vehicles, the maintenance costs are a little bit less. And that's until you have to replace the batteries, right? But more and more battery plants that are being built in the United States, the cost of the batteries is decreasing. And I believe that trend is going to continue.
Right.
And it's going to help all organizations achieve their sustainability goals.
Penny, you work with a wide range of customers and industries, as we're all aware of. Which sectors do you see leading the way in EV adoption and why?
Well, we see organizations with large delivery fleets, I think, as the earliest adopters. Most of these organizations can plan on charging their vehicles during off-peak hours, which saves them money. It also assures their customers that they're doing what they can to help the planet. And let's face it, that's good PR. I mean, if you even look at a lot of the boxes that get delivered to your front door, I know the ones that get delivered to my front door say we're using less packaging. And I'd say 98% of those vehicles that I see are EVs.
They're not the most attractive vehicles, but they do the job. So
Right?
I guess you have to sacrifice because EVs, they have certain criterias and you're looking to save weight and all that. So, there's a lot of things that go into that. And
Well,
where do you
let me add to that for just a quick second, Joe, because I've been to a lot of these EV shows across the United States in the last year and a half.
uh-huh.
And I will tell you that when you talk to people who get in and are driving these semi trucks, they say they are the best vehicles they've ever been able to drive, and they're the most comfortable.
That's interesting. That
Yeah,
because I bet you a lot of people would not be thinking that. So
right.
awesome. So where do you see the biggest gaps? Is it between the growing market demand and the readiness of electrical system to actually support the infrastructure? Is it cost? What is it?
Okay, so there are a few things, right? So most charging sites are fed from utility-owned transformer. And if that transformer fails, the charging system goes down. That is unless they have backup power, such as a standby generator or a battery energy storage system, better known as a BESS. Additionally, we don't see many sites with redundancy within the switchgear. So it's not like if you lose your main breaker, you can tie into the other main breaker on the other side of the switchgear. So
Mhm.
if there is a fault that occurs or an issue with the main breaker, again, the entire system is going to go down. And I was just reading an article this morning that talked about, initially consumers had the fear of distance with EVs. And now that the distance is growing and growing with, the intelligence of the EV market, now it's more of, are their charging sites going to be reliable? So that the fear for, I think the general consumer has kind of shifted.
Yeah, it seems like they went from making sure they have the ability to charge, but now it's like, ooh, now we have to make sure that we're reliable so people can come up there. So yeah, that's a great point. Obviously, reliability is key for EV infrastructure, and customers expect chargers to work every time. Now you and I both know that not everything works all the time.
Right?
But that reliability depends on everything upstream, just like you talked about the transformer, utility capabilities and such like that. When you're working with customers, how do you explain the importance of those upstream components like switchgear and breakers? How do you convey the importance and the need to install and maintain that?
So it's a continuing effort, to be honest with you, Joe. The charging industry, for the most part, and I can't, group everyone together, but for the most part, they're really not worried so much about the breakers and the switchgear because I've actually heard someone say, "Well, that switchgear is so robust, we don't worry about it at all." To that I say, "Well, you either don't know or don't understand the codes and standards that require routine maintenance and testing. If a
Yeah,
breaker is feeding several chargers and is nuisance tripping, well, there goes your reliability." And yeah, I don't think the industry has caught up with the codes and standards like the updates in NFPA 70B and E, which changed from you should do it to you shall do it, which
you're
now
right.
becomes a code requirement.
I agree. In my experience being in the industry and in the field, we do everything we can. And some of these chargers, let's face it, I mean, they're along the highway, they're right by a big, a gas station over there. They might have a setup, and you're out in the atmosphere, and there's rodents and things like that, that snakes that get in there, and dust, dirt, spiders, and these are the things that cause the issues. But I think the mindset of the owner is like, this is what I plug my car into at home. I mean, this is easy. And I think the reality check of when real life, occurs, I think has a major impact on them moving forward. But that's just, looking from the outside in.
Nope, I agree 100%.
So, what are some of the reliability concerns that tend to come up early in planning discussions? So, when they're starting to figure out, like, do we want to do this?
So I would like to talk to customers and prospective customers about redundancy and backup power. Additionally, getting short circuit and coordination studies completed early in the process to ensure that the switchgear and all of its components meet the required ratings and interrupting capacities as designed. And, let's not forget things like the arc flash hazard analysis. These
Hmm.
studies ensure safety and reliability of equipment, personnel, and the general public, and they are extremely important.
I would agree, especially because let's face it, not everybody has the same safety concerns and ability to, understand, electrical systems, and, we want to make sure that everybody's safe. So I could not agree more. However, budget, we always know that budget plays a role. So how do you assist customers understand the short-term cost against the long-term ROI when it comes to design and reliability? Because that's a big one.
Well, it is, but you kind of have to go back to redundancy and backup power. I think part of when we discuss this early in the process with customers and prospective customers, their concerns come up with, like you said, the initial investment, but also how much real estate is this going to take up,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
if you're at a retailer's, your parking lot space is limited, and so getting any sort of backup power just takes additional parking spaces away, and they don't really want to talk about that. But if you think of it this way, as far as the return on investment, and this is kind of what I like to explain, if every time you went to your neighborhood gas station, like you stopped at before you did a road trip every time, and you got your soda and your candy bar or a cup of coffee or whatever,
Right. Yep.
but the last 5 times you went there, they were out of gas, you more than likely would find another gas station to go to, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to be able to get fueled up before you go. So
Right.
that's lost revenue and it's damage to the station's reputation. And I don't think you can put a big price tag or a small price tag on those items.
How many charging stations, like if you go to a gas station, how many charging stations are available? I mean, is it five? Is it 10? Is it what's the average?
Joe, I have to tell you, I do not have an average because it all depends on the size of the gas station and all of the amenities that go along with it. There
Mm,
is a retailer not far from my house that I frequent, and I think they have 6 bases. They're in a
mm.
huge parking lot, and they have grocery stores and the wine store, and they have many other retailers there that they're all sharing that parking lot. There's not a whole lot of charging spots, but then I hear about a major fueling station coming to just north of where I live, and they're going to have 15 charging stations, fast chargers. So it really depends on the owner or charge point operator and the size of the facility itself.
Well, it sounds like the growth is needed, and they're starting to look into that, so that's good. I have another question regarding
Okay.
preventive maintenance. How do you see customers include preventive maintenance as part of their charging strategy rather than just an afterthought when the system goes down?
I don't really think they're there yet. I think the industry isn't quite there yet. We're trying to educate our customers and the industry as a whole on the requirements for maintenance testing. The market segment where we do see more maintenance testing is the large fleet and distribution organizations and those that are charge point operators that are paid to make sure that when 15 semi trucks come rolling in, that they all
Yeah.
have reliable chargers. And that's where I see the market going to. But I think as far as the individual that I'm taking a road trip in my EV, you're not going to see that maintenance testing until things start to fail.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see in the future, how they're trying to get trucks with, no drivers, just satellite and be electric. I can see 10 years from now that there'll be no driver in the truck. He just, when it needs some charge, they'll know how to, pull in and back out. I see that as technology moves forward. So that'll be interesting to see where we're going with that.
Well, and to support that, I mentioned earlier the several EV shows that I've been to, or EV charging infrastructure meetings and so forth. Um, they actually had autonomous semi trucks on display,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
re
yeah.
really super nice. I'm not kidding,
I you can't stop technology. I promise you that.
right?
So as EV infrastructure expands, we have to deal with compliance, risk management are becoming much bigger parts of the picture here. From a business standpoint, how do you position these requirements, just like we discussed, you addressed in NFPA 70B, as part of the overall value proposition for the customer?
Okay, and I did mention this earlier, and I apologize, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but in 2023, that verbiage changed from should to shall, and
Right.
that's just not a semantic modification. It's a code that needs to be adhered to. And ERS can utilize our NETA certified technicians to help customers get and remain compliant. And as far as the value proposition goes for that, if you aren't doing what you're required to by code and someone gets hurt badly, even minor or worse,
Yeah.
then you have lawsuits and litigation and fines and OSHA all over you. And I think that's something that, we have to explain and make sure they understand, what that risk is.
Awesome. Okay, that's a good point. I wasn't even thinking about that. So we go to, where do customers most often underestimate the risk? Because if you're ignorant of the system, you're going to underestimate the risk. So how do you guide them through that conversation to get them to understand what they need to do?
There are a couple factors there. I think making sure they understand what electrical class they're in, low voltage, medium voltage, high voltage, because codes and requirements are modified based on that.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the most underestimated risks, or one of the major risks, is the grounding system itself. That is mostly overlooked as far as electrical maintenance programs go. Inadequate grounding can cause harm to the equipment, danger to personnel, and then the public too, the general public who's utilizing or working on the equipment. And let's face it, if they're not trained on how to work on the equipment, it's very dangerous.
Yeah. So this is one thing that I think those in our industry have come across. When compliance and maintenance overlooked, the consequences can be catastrophic, whether it's downtime, damaged equipment, or even the regulatory penalties. How do we convey that to the businesses, what the impacts are with the decision makers? How do we get them to understand that these things need to be addressed?
So we kind of have to go back to the people making decisions with regard to purse strings, so to speak. They
Right.
may not completely understand what we do and why we do it, but they do understand fines, lawsuit, and loss of revenue.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of where we go back and say, we can show you what pieces of your system fail more frequently and how much that might cost you. And let's face it, we all know that if you have an emergency, and I mean, I'm talking something as silly as your garage door breaking,
Yeah.
and it's 10 o'clock at night, and you have to call somebody to come repair it because you don't want to leave your garage gaping open all night long.
Right.
It's going to cost you 3 times more than it would have if you had been able to call during the day.
Yeah.
So, we have an awesome compliance service offering, and we can get decision makers from how do we get there to, oh, these guys can help us get there. And I
Right.
think those are some of the important things to have conversations with decision makers.
And then for those facilities that there's always a few that hesitate to move forward due to cost, what's your advice to help them see the bigger picture?
Well, I pretty much think that one's a simple one, right? A single accident or death can cost millions, not to mention the loss of reputation, and not to mention also the damage to that person and their family, whether that is a public individual or, general public, or whether
Hmm.
that's someone who can work on the charger but doesn't know anything about the switchgear themselves.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So as the EV industry grows and moves forward, what trends or shifts do you see shaping the EV deployment over the next 5 years, from grid capacity to smarter load management to preventive maintenance? What trends are, how do we address that is my question.
Well, I think initially, if you think kind of way back, no one thought the grid was going to be able to keep up with the EV charging industry, but so far it has. Way back when everyone was worried that utility companies weren't going to be able to keep up with the AC industry because AC was being installed in homes like everywhere, right? I
Right, right.
grew up in Pennsylvania. Did we have AC in our house when I was growing up? Heck no.
Nope.
Um, when my mother moved out of that house, was there AC in that house? Absolutely. So I think the utility companies are really researching and working tirelessly to support the grid
Yeah.
reliability. And additionally, there are many organizations that have developed software platforms and software to assist with smart load management.
Yep.
And I think that researching that various organizations and the software they offer can help the adoption of the EV charging infrastructure move forward with a lot less worry with regard to the grid.
Yeah, that's just, I think, growth and maturity of that industry, adapting to changing needs and exactly what you're saying. So, very good. As more organizations, get into the EV world, the EV investments to sustain stability, energy, and goals. How do you help them align those strategies?
Well, I think number one, through reliability and safety, because without reliability and safety, they're never going to meet the goals that they have, right? So
Right.
those are extremely important items that have to be discussed early in the process.
Yeah, it's almost like the culture of the company regarding EV infrastructure and growth and moving forward. It's always the culture of the company that dictates failure and success in my experience. What do you
No,
think?
I agree 100%.
Yeah, yeah. And finally, Penny, any advice for business or facility leaders trying to balance reliability, compliance, and growth as they plan for the future of EVs?
Yeah, I think, the whole uh, this comes full circle when I say don't forget the electrical system. It's the
Mm-hmm.
lifeblood of each and every EV charging facility. So there's a lot of talk and a lot of articles, a lot of conversation around the charger itself. I think when I read an article this morning, one organization had trained over 20,000 people to work on the chargers, but these are the same guys that might be asked to reset a breaker if a breaker is tripping. Now, we've been in the industry long enough to know, Joe, that if you don't have the proper training and don't have the proper personal protective equipment, you reset a breaker into a fault and it could mean a major disaster. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
important issues. And again, it takes a lot of education.
I couldn't have said it better, Penny. That's perfect.
Thanks, Joe.
Excellent. Excellent. No, seriously, that's it sums it up because, this is a new industry. Things are always getting bigger, more power, more capability, and we have to keep up with that, and I couldn't agree more. Well, Penny, I know you're busy. I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's clear that EV infrastructure is about much about strategy and reliability as about is technology. And I want to thank you for sharing your information and knowledge because this is going to help others move forward.
Anytime, Joe.
We go way back, Penny, so it's always a pleasure hearing your voice. So that's it for this episode of Keeping Current. If you found today's conversation valuable, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and tune in every other Thursday for more expert insights. You can connect with us on LinkedIn to stay in the loop. And as always, thanks for listening. We appreciate your time. And until next time, keep current. Thank you very much.